Hi y'all, I'm Tara Polmeyer with Progress Texas, and I'm here with candidate for our U.S. Senator here in Texas, Amanda Edwards. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you a few quick questions about some of your policies. The first one is on voting rights, which is something that we're very passionate about here at Progress Texas. If elected, what policies would you put forward to expand voting rights and kind of end Texas's history of voter suppression in our state?
So unfortunately, voter suppression in our state has been quite rampant, and we've worked unfortunately to reduce access to the ballot box rather than to support more and increased access to this ballot box. We have got to do things that don't cut away from our Voting Rights Act, for example. So we recall pre-clearance was something that went away, and we've got to make sure that we are passing laws that don't suppress the vote. And so inside of the state of Texas, we've had a number of things that were challenged on the federal level with respect to our voting rights in terms of voter suppression laws and strategies that have been put into place that we needed and need to make sure we don't have as part of our barriers to accessing the ballot box. We have a legacy. If you look back over history and all of the things that have been done to suppress the right to vote, because that is the direct line that you have to the people.
Absolutely.
And we have got to make sure not only are those laws intact that support the right to vote and enhance our ability to right to vote. I'll use an example, not necessarily federal policy, but even in the county that I'm from, Harris County, we've actually seen some very positive progress in terms of reducing some of the barriers, making early voting more accessible to people, making sure that they can go in different locations. Those are some local examples of things that can happen as well. So whatever we can do to make sure that we're not also creating this crisis that may not really be this crisis that people make it out to be of voter fraud, when in truth they are just trying to put in obstacles in place to make people more intimidated to actually vote.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Moving on to abortion access, do you support repealing the Hyde Amendment, and would you support an expansion to Medicaid that includes abortion access?
Yes. So yes and yes. I would definitely support that. I think when that was put into place, the Hyde Amendment, I think that was a different time, I suppose, but I think now most people would acknowledge or understand that that doesn't have a place in where we are today, as it relates to women and our rights and our ability to reproduce. And I think also looking at ways that we increase access to healthcare coverage and women's reproductive rights are included under that umbrella is one of the ways that I think has been a challenge in the way we talk about these issues. But really and truly, this is about having an ability to be healthy, make the choices that you need to make. And it's not suggesting that anybody in their own personal life couldn't make whatever choice that's right for them, but we can't have laws that restrict our ability to maneuver and do what's right for the individual.
Absolutely. When it comes to gun reform, which is I think something on the top of a lot of Texans' minds here, what common sense gun reforms do you believe we could enact now?
I mean, almost 90% of the American public agrees with universal background checks.
Absolutely.
And yet and still, I mean, Columbine happened when I was in high school, and we're still debating what should be gun policy, sensible gun policy in our country, looking at red flag policies, looking at ways in which we can make sure people who have a restraining order against them don't cause harm to themselves or to someone else. We've got to make sure that we're putting into place systems that will keep our community safe. No one deserves to go to a church, a hospital, a doctor's office, or any other place of business or commerce and be shot down. No one should be expecting to have that happen when they send their children to school. And so we've got to put people first, not an A+ rating from the NRA. I think that is what John Cornyn might have, and I'll say this, I've made some good grades over my life, but an A+ rating from the NRA I will not make. And that is because we've got to keep our community safe. We have to be serious about this, and it has to get to root causes. And so we've got to really start getting more serious and lead with courage rather than fear of the NRA.
Absolutely. On to our fourth question. What is your vision for affordable health care for Texans?
Great question. So, little personal anecdote. When I was growing up, my dad was ill with cancer. He got diagnosed when I was about 10 years old. And although he passed away when I was about 17 years old, I will tell you some of the things that I remember most about conversations about his treatment. And I learned what our U.S. healthcare system was through asking a lot of those questions. So my dad was getting stem cell treatment and all kinds of stuff like that, and I'd ask, well, what if this insurance, you know, I was young then, and I'd ask, what if they say no, what happens next? And my dad would say, oh, well, we'd have to try to figure something out. And I'd say, well, what if you can't figure out something, or what if somebody else can't figure out something? It doesn't seem right.
Like a lot of Texans go through. Yeah.
Yes, we're actually #1 for uninsured Americans in the nation, and we have a high number of uninsured children here. And so really, where do we go from here? Well, one thing I believe in is that we should make the statements that we make, we should deliver on. And I think the best way where we can find the most consensus is fixing the Affordable Care Act such that we have a public option that is actually affordable. So hear that piece, an affordable public option, but then also that we've got to drive those premium costs down. They have gone up, they need to go down. Part of how to do that is by making sure there's transparency in billing. So a lot of what is being charged in that space, people don't even realize what those charges really are. They don't tie to outcomes. Making sure you reframe that paradigm, making sure there's more predictability within the insured pools. There's a variety of things that can be done that can help to drive those premium costs down. But then in addition to that, making sure we're closing the loopholes. Under the Trump administration, there's been a widening of many loopholes, like short-term insurance and the length of time that is. And then now you think you're paying into a system or an insurance program that will give you benefits, and then you need the benefits and they're not there. And so who wants to do that? Like, these are things that are just kind of, as I like to call it, we say in my city council office, I like to say a grandmother's standard treatment of care. Like, what would you want somebody to do to your grandmother, you know? And would you want somebody to have her paying into a program and then she realizes that she's been paying for something that really doesn't exist? Of course not. And so you want to make sure that we're securing and providing healthcare access, but then that people are adequately insured, and that you're expanding that pie. And I think the way we can get more consensus is fixing the things that we got wrong with the Affordable Care Act, because I don't think anybody defends it in the way that it's absolutely perfect. Of course, there are some challenges with it, but fix them. Listen to what people have said are the challenges of what they like. If they want to keep some employer-based insurance, let that happen as well. But fix the pieces that are wrong and expand what is right.
Absolutely. And then our final question, how would you ensure that our immigration system, especially for Texans, protects immigrants and vulnerable communities under our law? And is there what reforms would you be interested in working on?
Well, you mentioned the funny word. You said under our law. Right now, we don't have, we have not updated or modernized our immigration policy in quite some time. And in fact, from administration to administration, it appears that that is where our immigration law is being created. And what we have to do is have the courage to codify comprehensive immigration reform that creates adequate pathways to citizenship for people who are here trying to work, trying to support their families, trying to do the right thing, and provide pathways. But at the same time, we've got to take a macro look at this thing and see, why is it that people are still waiting in line since the 1990s in terms of trying to become American citizens, and the complexity that's associated with the various paths that one can take to citizenship. We've got to get this under a different umbrella of not just perpetuating what has always been, but looking from a different viewpoint of what can be and how can we have a system that reflects our American values. Of course, we want to keep our borders secure, but there is absolutely nothing that has to do with border security and keeping a child in a cage or sleeping on aluminum foil. That's ridiculous. But let's use this moment of something that we're really embarrassed by in terms of what we've been doing at our borders as a moment to actually catalyze change and long-term sustainable reform. And that's what we need to go to. I think there are lots of people who are anxious for us to get there. The question is, can we get there through actually creating new legal structures that exist and really create an America that I think we were built to be.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I guess our final conclusion is, what is your path to flipping Texas, and what would you like Texans to know about you?
Oh, great question. Well, I think one of the things that's key about this race and this campaign is that this is about building a people-powered movement where people of Texas are getting the results that they deserve. And so to unpack that a little bit, what do I mean by that? This doesn't start with my launch and end with my election day. This is about restoring power to the hands of the average ordinary American citizen so that they recognize that not only are they the boss and they hire us, but they can get rid of us. And if you have people in office who are not doing the job that you ask them to do, they come to your doorstep, they ask for your vote, but yet and still you don't see the results, that's not the person for you in that role. We can achieve a democracy that actually works for people, where people actually see the change that they're inspired by in terms of what they hear on the campaign trails. And so it's time for us as electeds to make this more about servant leadership and less about politics and Twitter. And I'm really, really excited about the prospect of partnering with the people across Texas in order to do that. One of the key things that I think stands out about my candidacy is the coalitions we'll be able to build in this race. We saw the strengths of Beto's election cycle, where he built upon this growing group of folks who feel more in the middle, you know, suburban voters, independent voters, and that group, and that was a big strength, and he listened very well. We'll take that approach and be able to build on that, but then also look at some of those communities that didn't turn out in the 18 cycle, looking at those under the age of 35 who registered in high numbers, didn't come back out in high numbers, looking at people of color who registered in high numbers but didn't come back out. Oftentimes when that happens, it's not just a matter of someone choosing not to do that because they don't want to participate as a matter of course. They're not seeing the nexus to their lives and how their life will be different. And so having a candidate who has a demonstrated track record where I've been working in those communities, I'm committed to working alongside those communities, and most importantly, delivering results for those communities as well as all communities, I think is exactly the path that we need to take in order to unseat John Cornyn and have your next U.S. Senator sitting right here with you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Amanda, and we'll have more information on how you can get out and vote, how you can get involved at progresstexas.org. Thank you.